Hello, and welcome to TA Intel, a podcast about the business of small business support. Each episode of TA Intel offers practical insights on leadership and professional development for the people who run and deliver services in entrepreneurial support organizations. I'm your host, Christian Conroy. I have over 30 years of experience leading organizations that enable small businesses to start, grow, survive, and thrive. I provide leadership and strategic support to economic development and educational organizations across the country. I'm joined today by Mike Daniel. Mike is the director of the Orange County Inland Empire SBDC network in California. In this episode, we will be discussing how benchmarking can improve performance, support smart management decisions, and identify opportunities for improvement and growth. Let's get into it with Mike. Mike Daniel, welcome to TA Intel. Before we get started, why don't you take a moment and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background and the entrepreneurial support organization that you run.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Christian. My name is Mike Daniel. I'm the network director for the Orange County Inland Empire SBDC network. We're a group of 10 business centers that support entrepreneurs with starting and growing their business, funded by the SBA, and also we receive state funding and local funding. And I've been in this position for almost 11 years. And prior to that, ran a center. And I also own a couple of Rocky Mountain chocolate factories.
Great. Okay. Well, again, welcome. As you know, the topic of this episode is benchmarking. And, let's face it, benchmarking can sound technical or, maybe even a little dry. So for leaders who are busy running programs and serving clients, why is benchmarking worth their time?
Yeah, what I find, benchmarking is a great way to explore where I want to grow, how organizations can really look at opportunities and what others are doing, kind of figure out what are best case scenarios and how to move their programs forward. They're utilizing data, whether it be effective and efficient type of metrics or outcomes. It's just a great way to kind of start the conversation of what are others doing really well and how can we emulate some of those things.
Okay. And then, talk about a little bit in terms of how you use benchmarking in practice, to run and improve your program. So,
Yeah.
where does it actually influence decisions?
Yeah, I would start with, I'll start with our program specifically. We really wanted to say and see, are we efficient in what we're doing, right? Like how many hours are we producing for the budget that we have? How many clients are we serving? Like that was a really easy one to say, like, how do I benchmark this across other programs that are getting similar funding or getting more funding? Are we on pace? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? And with that, then how do we look at the ones that are really outperforming everybody else? What are they doing that we could implement in our program to really kind of grow it and see value in it? And then there's outcome based, right? Like, are we getting, for us, business starts, capital? Are we seeing a lot of results from that? Mm-hmm. And are we where we should be based on where others are at? Are we not? So it's just a great way to kind of figure out where you're at. But then, like I said, there's so many little nuggets that others are doing that you can implement in your program. And we don't run all the same programs. So, it's a great way for us to see.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, there's no shortage of data, right? That
Mm-hmm.
we can benchmark on. So what have you found are metrics that, tend to be most useful and maybe which ones are less helpful or harder to compare in a meaningful way?
Yeah, so I'll take just our organization. What's great, I think, about our organization, there's 63 networks, right? So an opportunity to see what 62 other organizations are doing. So I'll start there. Like I said, hours are huge for us. Like how many clients are we serving? When we get into smaller areas or rural areas, are we servicing the same way? Our larger metropolitan areas, do we have enough coverage, per capita or per population? Are we able to service enough? Like those are like efficient numbers that I like to look at. The other one is, what is the cost for us to do an hour compared to others? Like that's such an interesting metric of, you may have a $20 million program and $1 million program. Is the cost the same, right? And how do we kind of figure out where we should fit? I would say the one metric I think that we've really kind of gravitated towards is what percentage of our clients are reaching a positive outcome that's really moving their business forward. Like for us, that's a really interesting metric that we started to look at. Other things, right? Fundraising is a huge one for us. Like how much money are we fundraising, whether it be from our state, our nonprofits, or our CRA dollars from lenders. So we look at, what are others doing, and benchmark. Interesting, right? I mean, not everybody would think to benchmark how much money you're raising, but I find that to be a huge piece of where we're at and what we're doing.
That's a very broad range of different types of data points and metrics and things to
Yep.
be, to evaluate and assess your performance on. So, which I think is, really kind of helping to make the case that, benchmarking could be valuable. So, how should leaders then think about the appropriate entities to benchmark against?
Yeah, I mean, like peers, right? Like organizations, I think is the easy one. But, I think they're like expand your horizons. I mean, I'll give you, for example, then we can talk about it a little bit more in detail, maybe a little bit later. We really wanted to make sure that we were seen as a thought leader in our space. And we said, well, who else is doing that? There's not a lot of other thought leaders in our space, but God, there were some amazing thought leaders, that are doing stuff in our region. And so we said, how can we look at what they're doing, which is very different type of work than what we were doing. And, for example, Goodwill of Orange County, boys and girls clubs, like, right, big entities that are well known and they're known for what they do. Well, as an SBDC, we weren't really known. It was just an acronym that people didn't understand. So we said, what are they doing to make sure that people know who they are, what they do, what their value proposition is? And so we looked at what they were doing, who they were marketing to, who was on their board, like who are the people of sphere of influence that they were trying to touch and reach. And we tried to emulate that really from benchmarking, who knows who they are and what they do.
So, how do you measure thought leadership?
Yeah, it's do people even know who we are, right? It's a tough one to
Okay.
measure, right? It's very much a
Okay.
qualitative measurement. It's not necessarily a quantitative measurement. I think sometimes we get stuck on everything has to be quantitative to measure, but
Right.
sometimes it can be qualitative, right? There's other values of what we're trying to do that, benchmarking plays a huge role.
Okay. So, is in a situation like that,
Mhm.
it's just I'm it's a curious example to use
Yeah.
for benchmarking, because what I'm wondering um, is it just knowing whether or not you're considered a thought leader in your community and in your space, I think would be data and information that would be helpful and useful and interesting just in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I see that as a very difficult thing to be able to collect. So it's interesting that not only are you able to collect it, but that you're able to then use it to compare yourself to other types of not even similar organizations, but different organizations within your community to see how do you stack up against that. That is a
Yeah.
really, that was a much more robust example than I had expected.
Sorry. Yes. And let me give you some other ways that we're trying to measure that is,
Wow.
our news organizations reaching out to us when there's some type of small business issue. Are the state legislators calling on us to go testify, right? I mean,
Right.
things that didn't happen before that are starting to happen now because of things that we're doing. We do a small business survey that really is forecasting out what small business owners want in the future. That was another piece that we thought, like, no one else is owning this space. How can we do that? And now all of a sudden I've seen that report everywhere, right? People are taking advantage of what we're doing, and our name and brand is right underneath it every single time.
So I mean, those you just gave examples of, quite a list of different data points. I mean, in practicality, I mean, how do you actually keep track of all of that?
Yeah. So many of us keep track in our areas and in our lanes, but everything ties back to, at least for us, to our strategic plan of where we want to go as an organization. It's the one binding piece for us that ties us all together. And so we have measurements, like we have goals, right, of what we want to be. And one of our goals is to become a thought leader, right, in this space. And we have some qualitative examples and quantitative examples of where we want to be over the next 2 years. And what I just expressed to you or gave you some of those numbers and those metrics, that's what we're tracking, and we keep updating it every quarter, and just to kind of see where we're going and making sure we're on track.
Okay. I mean, but I think, in my mind, this has identified, I think, one of the challenges, I guess, that comes with benchmarking, which is, how do you get data from other entities to benchmark against, especially like in the example that you just gave, where there
Yeah.
really isn't a formal data set, that's readily available. It's not like going to census.gov and, being
Yeah.
able to compare yourself to what they have in there. So how do you tackle that?
Yeah, so interesting. So one of them, I'm on their board, so it was easy to get their strategic
Okay.
plan, which outlined their marketing strategy over the next 2 years of where they wanted to go, what
Insider
they were
information.
measuring.
Okay.
Right. And some of them are posted, that you could go
Right,
grab
that's true. Most
easily.
people do post their strategic plan, yeah.
Right. So I think that you can go grab those things, but it's also
Okay.
looking into, where are they posting? How many times are they posting? What are they even posting about, right? Whether it's social, digital. In today's world right now, when we talk about utilizing AI or some of these other tools to say, like, what are others doing? Who are they targeting? You can actually go find those things.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, the corollary to this is the biggest, feedback that I've heard about the challenge to benchmarking is that, even once you get data from other organizations, that there's just so many different variables
Yeah.
in place, differences in funding, different competitors that you have, the economic conditions, demographics of the customers that you serve, a whole variety of things like that, as a result of that, you really can't make meaningful comparisons. So do you have any suggestions on how leaders can address this?
Yeah. I think first, just looking at data, just to look at the data is not the right approach to benchmarking, right? There's got to be an intent and a purpose to why you even want to look at it in the first place. And I know we have a question coming in the future, so I'll try not to answer it right here. I think first of all, kind of normalizing some of the data makes a whole lot of sense, right? And, I'll give you an example. I'm getting ready to go on an accreditation review. First thing I look at is number of hours that they're servicing based on their budget. That's the first thing. And then I divide the number of hours into their total budget and look at where they're at dollar per hour compared to their peers. And I think a lot of people, maybe that's a good place to start. Maybe it's not. I think we're all trying to become much more efficient in what we do and service more clients. And so usually when I see in a strategic plan that our goal is to see more clients or to see a certain sector of clients, are we then looking at other programs that are trying to service those same things? And what are they doing, right? I think the benchmarking data gives you one thing, but then you got to go 10 steps further to find out what are they actually doing, to accomplish whatever you just found in the benchmarking. So I think that you can't stop at just the number, right? And I think, and like I said, I'll try not to answer the next question that you're going to ask. But that's the problem with, I think, a lot of people, the way they look at benchmarking is it's just like, it's a comparison just of data and they stop there.
Right. I mean, it's interesting to bring this up because one of the, I was recently working with an organization that was doing some benchmarking to try to understand their performance. And one of the things that came out of that discussion was that maybe it didn't necessarily make sense at the organizational level to look at this, like to compare their economic development program to another, but maybe it was pieces of what they were doing. So for instance, if they had a focus on, helping to, start businesses, maybe they could identify some peer organizations, and rather than look at the overall performance of that other peer, just look at, what was their performance related to business starts versus theirs. And I thought that was a really insight. I mean, that was something that they learned just from going through the process of benchmarking was,
Yeah.
overall organizational comparisons may be too broad a comparison to have.
100%. And you hit on business starts, right? 10 years ago when I started in this program, we were super low in business starts and trying to figure out why we spend 70% of our time on somebody starting a business and 30% of our time on people already in business, when really the value of this program is people in business already and helping them grow and scale. And what we came across was other organizations, not even our similar organization, doing work in cohort programs, right? Which was somewhat novel to us, right? At the time, 10 years ago, we weren't doing that. It was really one-off. The value was one-on-one consulting. And we have now, 10 years later, everything we do is cohort style. Like we're training a lot to kind of feed down into smaller groups, and our business starts are, 200% higher than they were 5 years ago.
Wow, that's terrific. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the flip side of this? I mean, what have you seen have been some of the mistakes that organizations make when benchmarking? I mean, is it, using the wrong peers, too many metrics, not understanding the context, and what have been some things that you've experienced?
Yeah, so I'll start with all the above that you just said.
Okay.
That's always good. But I think the biggest issue that I see with all organizations, at least when when they're looking at benchmarking, they're looking at benchmarking to say, where do I fit? And am I better than them or not as good as them? Right. And that's the start and stop of all of it. Right. They just want to be better than everybody else. And then that's good enough. I would say that is the number one issue that I see. Secondarily, yes, they're measuring too many things. They don't even know what they want to measure. right? It's like, okay, well, we want more business starts. So, oh, well, we're comparing to two like organizations and we have more than them. So we're good, or we're just below them and they struggle too. So it's good enough. They're not using the data just to say, oh, they're doing 50% more than we are. How are they doing that? What types of things are they doing? They're not going deep enough into the data just tells you right where the gap or the opportunity is. It's just like looking at we're looking at a financial statement for a business. We would look at all the gaps and say, here are the opportunities to grow. Now let's go figure out how to do that. They stop at just looking at the financial, or they stop at just looking at the benchmark number. So I'd say that's, to me, the number one biggest issue I see.
Have any suggestions for when somebody does an analysis like this and, they don't come out on top? Like you said, they're looking for data where they look good. And
Yeah.
so, let's say they compare themselves to, 3 to 4 or 5 other organizations and they consistently ranked, you know, well below their peers. I mean, how should they approach that data?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would start by looking at like what are their peers doing, right? I mean, I think that's one thing, but I also don't always want to compare just to the ones that look just like me, right? Or get the same amount of funding or get the same amount of X or in the same area. I want to go benchmark myself against somebody that's in a completely different area that has a completely different budget. And what great things are they doing, right? What are they getting from all these things? So I think it's looking deeper than just your direct, in line, right? We get the same funding, we're in the same area, we get all the same things, so we should be the same. I think you need to look outside of that. And usually what I do, I see a lot of different networks. I'm like, you need to go compare yourself to somebody that doesn't look anywhere like you, somebody that maybe is aspirational, and then somebody that is just in a different area, so that you can see like they're probably doing amazing things, that you can take advantage of some of those things. But I'll bring it all back to, you still have to know what you're looking for. Like, where do you want to grow?
Right. Okay. So thinking about that, I mean, what, when should this happen? Like, how often, what kind of frequency should leaders and organizations take in terms of doing benchmarking and like, when do you usually do this? Is it part of annual planning, budgeting, making staffing decisions, something else? What kind of
So
cadence, I guess, is what I'm asking, would you
yeah,
suggest?
yeah. So we, at a minimum, do it at least once a year, right? As we go into strategic planning every year, we at least do it that often. But I would say whenever you're looking to do some kind of change, or you want to grow your program, or you want to focus on some specific area, like that's a great opportunity to do that. Like case and example that I just gave you of marketing, right? We really want to grow our marketing. Our focus are businesses that are established businesses doing less than $1 million. I would say somewhere between 250,000 to $1 million, that we can really grow and scale. Like that is our target audience right now. And so we are putting all of our resources into that. So we wanted to see what other networks and what other programs are targeting that same group. The other thing that we had is Bain, who's another consulting firm, come in and talk to us about when a client comes in, how do they sell themselves? How do they sell their service? Somebody that is not, we're in two different worlds of type of business owner that we're trying to attract and see, but similarities across, they have to go in, they have to sell their program. So do we, right? We may be at no cost to the end user, but we still have to sell the value of what we're bringing. And then the cycle and the process of how we're going to actually deliver, like, here's how we're going to help you, and then moving that forward. So it's great. Again, taking that from idea of like, here's where we want to go to here's where we got. So I think anytime you're trying to do some major change, I think benchmarking is a great opportunity to look at what others are doing before you jump in.
Okay. All right. So, as kind of a takeaway from this, or, to wrap this up, I mean, if somebody's listening to this and they want to get started, I mean, what are one or two, key takeaways that you would leave folks with?
Yeah, I would say start really small, start with one or two areas, contact a few peers. And sometimes it just takes a little while of, reaching out to some peers. You might be shocked at how many people are willing to share data with you, as long as you're willing to share your data with them. Start there. If you have an advisory board, maybe that's a good way to start, looking at some of their data. They may share with you, but, I'd say start small, start in a couple places, see where you find the value, and then grow from there.
Okay, great. Well, Mike, thank you very much for joining us. I mean, even though we had a pretty short time together, I mean, you certainly, I think, provided a really, robust and rich insights on, both, what is the value of benchmarking. You offered some good examples about how you can deploy it and use it to be able to really kind of grow and move your organization forward. So I appreciate your time and sharing this, and I hope you don't mind if people may reach out to you to find out a little bit more about how you've done this.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you, Christian.
Super great. Well, thank you again, Mike.
Thank you for joining us. We'd appreciate it if you could do 3 things. 1, subscribe to this podcast, TA Intel. 2, share this podcast with your colleagues. And 3, leave us a comment on what you would like us to cover in future episodes. We hope you will join us again in other podcasts of TA Intel. And for those of you joining from the SBDC, remember that benchmarking is part of the accreditation standards. So before we go, here's a quick overview of the Ascend Accreditation Accelerator, which can help you ace accreditation.
Welcome to the Ascend Accreditation Accelerator. This program is designed to help you streamline your accreditation process. The purpose of the Ascend program is to ensure you are fully prepared for accreditation. We will help you assemble the necessary documentation and understand the standards. Through Ascend, you will receive tools for development, management, and benchmarking. You will also get samples, interview exposure, and an assessment tool for your program's operations. The program includes 7 on-demand webinars detailing the Ascend model process. It also features 6 live peer learning sessions on Wednesdays. Ascend provides 3 key tools and essential resources to demonstrate meeting the standards. A key item is the Accreditation Documentation Tool. This helps manage the materials to include in the self-study. The program also includes a benchmarking tool with charts and data to compare your performance against peers. You will use the Ascend Key Components Assessment to review strategic thinking, planning, and program results for learning and improvement. You will learn from veteran SBDC leaders with real-world experience, who will share proven and tailored approaches to manage your program and achieve accreditation. Registration for the 2026 Ascend Accreditation Accelerator cohort is now open. Be sure to register before the deadline on August 7th. You can find more details and registration information at www.taadvisors.org/courses. For more information on the Ascend Accreditation Accelerator or any of our services, please contact Christian Conroy.
TA Intel is a production of TA Advisors, LLC. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved. For more information, visit taadvisors.org.